Good morning. Welcome to Literature Matters. My name is Bethany Papworth, and this is...
I'm Julie McLean.
And today we're talking about Veronica Roth's best-selling novel, Divergent.
Yes. Well, I'm only 3/4 of the way through this book, but you've finished it already, haven't you?
Yes, I have finished the book, and to be honest, it was a really good read. I really recommend it to people out there, and I think you'll come to find that it's a really interesting story. So I've really enjoyed it. And I also want to talk about today the character of Tris.
Oh, yes.
So what do you think?
She's the main character. She is a young girl, 16, and she lives in this kind of dystopian society, quite futuristic, but there's also the hint that it's a society that has survived a great war in the past, which we don't know a lot about. It's quite a different society. The main thing that's different from ours is that there are 5 factions, which are like...
Erudite, we have Amity, Abnegation, Candor, and Dauntless.
Yeah.
So she has to make quite a big decision at the start of the novel.
She has to choose which of these 5 factions she's going to spend the rest of her life in. We won't tell you which one she chooses. But basically, the point of these factions is every faction has a unique set of beliefs. For example, the Abnegation faction believes that the cause of war is selfishness, so they strive to be selfless, whereas Erudite believe that ignorance is responsible for war and think that arming yourself with knowledge will promote peace. So there's quite a lot of clashing ideologies at times, but sometimes they can band together and live in harmony, which is nice.
I think for me, though, I've always kind of imagined myself in Amity.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think standing for friendship, and they're quite colourful people. They wear very bright colours. Yellow, I've always liked the colour yellow.
And red.
And red. Red. I think the factions kind of resemble your personality.
Oh, yeah.
And the sort of individual that you're going to be. What individual or what faction would you see yourself in?
You know, I think, I haven't finished it yet, but I think they're all going to find out that actually you can't divide yourself into a faction, because I think people are too complex, honestly. And if you try and force people into a certain way of thinking, I don't think that's going to work out. I'm pretty certain at some point there's going to be some kind of rebellion and another war's going to break out, and, well, that's what I think is going to happen.
I think it's good to I think you're right, it's good to kind of be open about what faction you're going to be in, although you could kind of see yourself in lots of different factions in some ways.
I think people are multifaceted, aren't they? That's the word.
That is a great word. That's a brilliant word. That is a great word. I also think erudite. I don't know, because some parts of me, I also see myself in erudite, kind of knowledge, advancing, technology, different things. So I think that's quite exciting as well.
Yeah.
And candor, honesty, again, another crucial faction.
Oh, I imagine that one could be, quite a conflict kind of place.
Yeah,
everyone's always
hard.
speaking their mind. But it's quite interesting that the idea of factions and dividing people up. For me, I kind of see the influence of Harry Potter there, if I'm honest. I mean, there's not a lot of it. It's not one of these copycat books. Because in terms of plot and character, there aren't really any similarities, but I do see that in the initial setup of the civilization. But I find that quite interesting. Did you ever get sorted into a house?
Into a house?
For Harry Potter?
Oh, of course. Yes. Gryffindor. What can I say? Gryffindor.
I could see that as you, actually.
For me, though, my real role model, when it comes to literature, I think, is Hermione Granger.
Oh, best character ever.
Yeah, I mean, she really does. And Emma Watson, who plays Hermione Granger, she really sells the story. I think she was picked from a very young age, 12 years old, and she really glided into her role. As a Gryffindor, I think she represents, also her friends, Harry and Ron, represent courage, integrity, adventure, friendship, love, all of these, pride, I think sometimes, and togetherness. But these emotions that they go through in different aspects are really important with their friendship and growing up. But what house do you see yourself in?
I was sorted into Ravenclaw. This is on Pottermore.com, by the way.
Pottermore.
That's where you get sorted. I got sorted into Ravenclaw. So, does that mean I would be an erudite in Divergent? Or the thing is that obviously there are 5 rather than 4 places you could end up. Oh, I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out, wouldn't it?
That is a tough question. I think we're all kind of open to interpretation. I could see myself. I could almost see myself in Hufflepuff as well sometimes.
Oh, yeah, I like Hufflepuff.
I feel like
that's quite a lot like Candor, isn't it? Hufflepuff.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities between.
Oh no, Amity.
Amity, yes,
that's what I mean.
Amity and Hufflepuff. I've actually got quite a lot of traits and similarities. I think honesty, integrity, morality. There's so many different traits and different aspects and characteristics that are representative in both of these factions and houses. But it's interesting comparing literature, comparing Harry Potter to Divergent by Veronica Roth. I really think as well, the presentation of this book. What do you think of the presentation of this book?
You mean what the publisher's done
Yeah.
with it?
What do you think?
I like the cover. I think that's a good colour for a book.
It's a good colour. I think purple, the way that I'm just really interested in the presentation of this book and what the publisher's done. I mean, the birds that we have at the top of the book, kind of in the corner, is really pretty because we have a little bird and then a bigger bird. So it's like a crescendo of birds. It's a small, bigger, and she turns to face the future in a world that's falling apart. I think that really is key. These little slogans that she has, that the part of the book is quite interesting.
Tell you what I didn't like though. I didn't like the blurb.
The blurb!
I didn't like the blurb. The blurb put me off a bit, if I'm honest, but I'm glad I kept reading anyway. The thing I didn't like was the last sentence, and yet she is drawn to a boy who seems to both threaten and protect her. Like, how many times have we heard that before? I don't find that appealing. Threaten and protect. It's like...
Yeah, it's like an oxymoron.
From the start, that does not sound like a healthy relationship. And yeah, I do worry about what kind of message that's sending out, that's the kind of desirable person you're meant to be. Thankfully, the character is actually talking about isn't so threatening, I think, or aggressive as the blurb suggests, which is nice. I'm relieved for that because I like Tris and I want her to be happy.
Yeah. I was going to talk to you next about 4, the character 4. I think he's protecting her, but he's also quite threatening at the same time.
That is true. He's quite unreliable in a lot of ways and impulsive.
Yeah.
But I don't think those qualities themselves are necessarily bad.
No, I think I have to agree with you there. But their relationship, which develops in the stories, are very interesting. Through the stimulations that happen, you can see the characteristics and the way that Tris interacts with 4, and it's quite, for me, it was a really unexpected kind of friendship. What did you think about it?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Bit controversial, because although they're very close in age, he's actually her instructor. So then you wonder, ooh, is that taking advantage of the situation slightly? But no, I like their relationship. I think it's, at the stage that I'm at, it's not too serious in the book. I'm guessing it's going to progress.
Yeah. Do you think for you, is the book intellectually stimulating? I mean, so in the future, for children in the education system, do you think I'm talking futuristic when I say this, that maybe in 50, 60 years' time, this could be an academic book that children would have to write about in their exams. Do you think that could potentially be true, or could be a way forward?
It always surprises me the texts that schools do tend to use and the ones they choose to use, and it tends to be more classic ones like Frankenstein, like Edgar Allan Poe's short stories,
Gothic.
Yeah, the Gothic ones. I'm not sure. Maybe I wouldn't say never, but yeah, maybe.
I just feel like Divergent is a typical dystopian novel.
Oh yeah.
And it has a lot to offer. Also, I think on the land of dystopia is The Hunger Games.
Oh yes, that's very popular, isn't it?
Very popular. I think Suzanne Collins, she really captures the main meaning of the book. And I feel like, and she has captions as well, and she sells the book with the presentation, which the publisher has done very well with. So, and it's now a major motion picture.
Indeed it is. Two films have been made so far of the first two books. Am I right in thinking the third book's being divided into two films?
Possibly.
I think I did hear that.
Yes.
That seems to be quite a trend, doesn't it?
Wow, it really is a trend. I feel that the same with the Harry Potter, that was divided into two books for the seventh film. That went really well, because I was like, I really want to find out what's going to happen next, because we were given obviously the half of the film, but then it was like, stop. It was like, what's going to happen now? I want to know. And J.K. Rowling really did kind of keep us as well reading. She really did keep us going. She gave us little triggers, and it kept the reader wanting to find out what was going to happen next. What do you think of Katniss Everdeen in The Hunger Games?
Comparing her to Triss, I think they're both quite brave characters, definitely. Although they're both dystopian novels, they both have quite different situations to deal with, I think. Katniss is in a life or death situation with other teenagers, and nobody is really her friend, whereas Triss has managed to make some friends, even though it is suggested she might not always be able to trust them. They could turn on her, but if she stays on the right path, then it could be all right, and they'll remain her friends and they can protect her. It's kind of balancing on a knife edge. With The Hunger Games, you knew for certain, what the dangers were, whereas Triss's situation seems a lot more ambiguous.
Also, I think really interesting in The Hunger Games is the role that the Capitol plays. In the films, they represented the Capitol in a very rich, luxurious, we have all the money, the city, and it was maybe in some ways it looked very selfish. They had all the money and they didn't want to share. And I remember this one moment in the book when Katniss, she has her bow and arrow, and she shoots directly in their direction, and then they're all worried and scared. They're like, "Oh, Katniss, what are you doing?" And she really does scare them. So what do you think about the Capitol?
It was interesting. When I read it, I felt like it was a metaphor for Hollywood and fame in general. And yet then they go and make this massive film about it. And I'm like, the subject matter is basically the dark side of Hollywood. That's how I read it. There's people are always so concerned about their appearance. And people go to the extreme to stand out, dyeing their skin green and stuff like that, which seems quite odd to us. And then the whole idea of taking a nobody and elevating them to that status so you can watch them fall again. We've seen that countless times on programs such as The X Factor, other reality TV shows. And then the film seemed to forget that theme, which obviously, being a big Hollywood blockbuster, they have to be able to market it and get investment and everything. But it was interesting to see that theme disappear and get forgotten.
What do you think about, another question that's been on my mind, is the districts. The way that Suzanne Collins represents the different districts. 12 districts, although, yes, 12 districts. And I feel like that's really interesting, the way that she's depicted the 12 districts. But what do you think about the districts? Like, what's your opinion of the way that she's done that?
Again, similar to Divergent, it's a dividing up of the society. It seems quite interesting, categorizing people into sections. I think people are multifaceted. I think that kind of society is ultimately always going to fall down because people are going to rebel. It's not going to be what people want to do with their lives. It was interesting plot device though.
Oh, I think you're right in saying that. I was doing a bit of research on Divergent, and I was kind of really interested to find out what people thought about the book. So this is what some people have said, or summed up in some really kind of interesting words. In a few words, Divergent is one long initiation trial. Beatrice Pryor is a member of society that has been maintaining its peaceful existence by separating its citizens into 5 distinct factions. These factions are formed on the basis of virtues they cultivate in their members. Candour values honesty the most, abnegation, selflessness, dauntless, bravery, amity, peacefulness, and erudite, intelligence. At 16, all citizens take a test that is supposed to help them decide if they want to stay with the faction into which they were born or transfer to another faction forever. Beatrice's test results are inconclusive and puzzling. Ultimately, she decides to abandon the faction that she's decided. I'm not going to give away the faction. And her family and enter into a different one. But of course, this transfer isn't easy. The initiations trials are gruelling. Divergent is essentially a depiction of Beatrice's road to becoming into the faction that she chooses, both physically and emotionally. Beatrice's unusual test results come to play too in a major way. Now, I think that's quite interesting within itself, and I'm really interested to see the way that this is going to be depicted into or translated into film. What do you think? I mean, have you seen the trailer for the film Divergent?
I haven't seen the trailer for the film. The film comes out this week, I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah, the premiere's already happened. So that's exciting stuff. I would definitely like to go and see it when I finish the book.
I think that's like the book. I mean, it's a New York Times bestseller. So Veronica Roth has done so well.
Oh, definitely.
And I think that also that's really important is that the setting of the novel. Like we said, it's futuristic. It takes place in a futuristic world. And the idea that a lot of things are hidden with the characters. There's a lot of subtext with the characters. What do you think, I was thinking recently, what do you think about the Pryor family and their role?
Pryor family as a whole, it's interesting, isn't it? Because at the beginning, when we see them united within their faction Abnegation, they obviously love each other a lot, but Abnegation doesn't approve of much physical contact or speaking your mind, talking about yourself. So you can tell that they love each other because they ask after each other, but they never really say anything, which is interesting. I think probably a lot of families in the modern world can be like that. There's a disconnection between the children and the parents. It's also interesting the parents' reactions when the children, Tris and Caleb, separate from their family at age 16. The mother figure deals quite well with it, whereas the father figure lets his pride get in the way of his children's happiness, which is a very sad thing.
I think the dad is quite, in some ways, yes, his pride does get to him, but he's quite a lovable character. I do sympathise with the dad, and the way that, it's just interesting the way that it works. I feel like dystopian novels as a whole, throughout literature, where they're published in the world, they're very appealing for the reader. There seems to be a fashion in 2014 where everyone or authors are starting to kind of create this trend where they're making these films or they're writing the books about dystopian novels. And I think dystopia as a whole is a very interesting way of writing, and it's a type of writing and it's a way of life. I think I've also looked at media reviews lately, and it really was, when it was published, very interesting. It was published 2011, and this is what the media have said about it. Starred review: for those who love the Hunger Games, I for one, are willing to brave the sometimes sadistic tests of strength and courage Trist must endure. The reward is a memorable, unpredictable journey from which it is nearly impossible to turn away. So that was from a weekly publisher's review. Booklist have said the simplistic, colour-coded world stretches credibility on occasion, but there is no doubt readers will respond to the gutsy action and romance of this umpteenth spin on Brave New World. And that was by Booklist.
It is interesting though, there has been quite a trend for young adult dystopian novels in recent years. Obviously Divergent, The Hunger Games, you mentioned The Handmaid's Tale, which is quite similar, although I think that's aimed more at an adult audience. Also City of Bones, that was also made into a film which flopped. One book that I read, which I really enjoyed, was the Maximum Ride series, which is quite similar but takes a more of a sci-fi lean to it. And it involves teenagers who have been genetically modified to have wings fighting back against a society which rejects them.
Wow. I also think a novel that would really fit into this category is Matched by Ali Condi. She is interesting the way that she depicts this, because she depicts a society where everyone has to be matched. You need to find, for the female, you need to find your female, for the female, sorry, you need to find your male counterpart. And you're kind of forced together, like this, it's like this, a force to be reckoned with for the teenagers, because they're almost saying, right, you know, the society's saying, go and find a match, go and find your other part. And it's crazy because you're put together, there's this kind of bowl, and you take a piece of paper out of the bowl, and then you're told who you're going to be with for the rest of your life. I mean, that's mad. And then you're given these pills, red pill, blue pills, and they're meant to control your emotions. It's crazy. You're meant to kind of control your emotions with the red pill and the blue pill according to what's going on. And I also feel like it's really interesting when it comes to themes in Divergent. I think a key theme for me in Divergent would have to be identity. So like in other pieces of children's and dystopian novel fictions, I think the novel probes the place of authority and identity within the youth's relationship to parents and other social forces. So I'm quite interested in what critics have to say about novels. And Antero Garcia describes the thematic similarity between these dystopian novels to be an interest in the grasp of power between youth and adult authority, comparing to the novel To Unwind by Neil Shusterman. So in the New York Times, Susan Dominus stated that Divergent explores a more common adolescent anxiety, the painful realisation that coming into one's own sometimes means leaving family behind, both ideologically and physically. So I think taking into account points of view about main themes of Divergent is really important when understanding the novel as a whole. Social structure and knowledge, violence and fear. What do you think the way that violence and fear plays in the novel? What do you think? What role do you think it plays?
Well, the initiation process is quite grueling for all the initiates. That's what they call them. Mm-hmm. There is quite a lot of violence in that, in a sense. For example, because they're being trained to fight, being trained to use weapons. So, yes, I think one of the key themes is learning to use force for good. So it's all very well to know how to fight, how to defend yourself, but I think it's also very important to know who to pick your battles with. I think that's one of the key things. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying. They both have to deal, not they, I mean society and the characters in the book have to deal with both violence and fear. But I think in the factions, I'm going to mention Dauntless, the faction Dauntless. What, I'd be really scared and really worried to be in the Dauntless faction. Like, I can't imagine myself being in Dauntless. Like, the Dauntless are the faction where they are very, obviously, dauntless, fearless. They're very... they go and run between buildings, and it's really...
Jump off moving trains. Oh, they're basically daredevils, aren't they?
Yeah! They are like crazy daredevils, and as much as I'd love to kind of imagine myself in this daredevil situation, I can't imagine myself being a character who would kind of take on this role of being fearless. I mean, imagine if you're in the faction and you'd have to do that because everyone else around you would be acting in a dauntless way, as to say, and you would be influenced by your environment. But I really do believe that in this kind of philosophy that we are a product of our environment. We are a product of our society. And sometimes, just sometimes, we might say things or do things to fit in with the world around us. And I think that's true with literature as well. I think that's true when we're thinking about the novel and the role that Triss plays in the different factions that are about. And I also feel that she is quite an emotional being, and I'm not really surprised really with the society that she's living in. She feels angry, she feels sad, she feels all sorts of different emotions that are key to understanding her as a character. But I think what's also important is the role that the prior family play. What do you think about the other characters like Caleb? What's your view of Caleb?
Well, I'm only 3/4 of the way through the book, so Caleb is sadly quite absent, apart from in the first couple of chapters. I'm assuming he comes back, because from what I saw, he was a very interesting character. He, like Triss, he also chooses to abandon his initial faction, but he goes to a different one, to Triss. I think I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how his character has changed, what side of him his new faction has brought out of him and brought to the fore. But I did like how in the beginning there was instead of sibling rivalry, which is so common, we've got sibling companionship. They really seem to get along, and being so close in age as well, they had to choose at the same time because they were born in the same year. Can you imagine that?
That's crazy. That is so mad to think that they're born in the same year. But Veronica Roth is clever. She really does depict and portray a society which is witty, it's clever. The way that I think this is just going to read something that kind of really captured my attention when I was reading this book. I close my eyes and picture my mother and father sitting at the dinner table in silence. It is a lingering hint of selflessness that makes my throat tighten at the thought of them. Or is it selfishness? Because I know I will never be their daughter again. And that is crucial for Triss making that decision. What faction is she going to choose? I mean, I feel like she's really, in this faction of abnegation, she's taught to be selfless, not to look in the mirror, not to be self-indulgent, to think about others, to be considerate of others. I think that's really a really key role, and I think it has a lot of meaning.
Those are important life skills. I think it's quite interesting, the choice that she has to go through. To an extent, we all have to go through a similar choice, don't we? Even in our world, when we leave home, we go to university, or we go straight into work. There is like a gap that builds between you and your parents or the family that you left behind. But I think in the end it tends to grow back again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think characters in the end, they go back to their roots. And I feel like characters and human beings, I feel we all have a purpose. And life can sometimes be about trial and error and what we're deciding to do. Triss's purpose, that's for the reader to find out. I don't want to give too much away, but all I know is that I've really enjoyed this book and I really would recommend it. If you're, I don't know, studying all day or you've been at work all day and you just want to escape into a different world, pick up this Divergent book by Veronica Roth.
It's very addictive.
Because she will transport you into a different world and you will go on a journey as a reader and you will discover what's going to happen next. So I think from Bethany Papworth and
Julie McLean,
we have loved talking to you about literature matters and we'd like to thank you for watching today. We hope you have a brilliant weekend. The sun is out. What's more to love? I love a bit of sunny weather. So from Julie and I, we hope you have a great weekend and enjoy the sun. And, you know, if you're in the mood, Divergent by Veronica Roth, I highly recommend it. Okay. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you soon. Bye.
bye for now.